Okay. All right, we have a little bit of a problem because it looks like this broadcast is not working on Facebook. So I'm really sorry about it.
It's okay.
But we're just going to go with YouTube then.
YouTube, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so let's go. So hi everyone, if you're watching already, I just ran into technical problem here for a minute, but we're actually going to start for real in a second. Hi Howard, welcome so much to Dr. Howard Rankin, and I'm so excited to talk to you today as the last of our authors for our book Relationships for Men by Men. And I know that you, as a very experienced psychologist, have a lot to contribute to this. Um, right, are you good to go? Are you ready? Are you excited?
I am. Yes, thank you for having me on the show. Definitely. Yeah. And
Okay, and also,
yeah,
I just want
my
to say, I
fe-
watched.
my clinical experience has, taught me a lot as a result of watching and doing couples counseling and seeing couples interact. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's been very instructive.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. I've learned for myself through my own relationship, which was imploding, and then I started changing. And I sort of accidentally became a counselor. I didn't plan on doing it. But also, I have to say that you start seeing patterns. And I've probably been doing about couples counseling only for about 8 years. So I'm very sure I don't have the same amount of years behind me that you have. But there's definite patterns, I would say.
Yeah.
So, what would you say? Oh, well, first, before we start, I just want to ask that if somebody can just check for us if our sound is good. I think last week we had sound problems, so I just want to check that our sound is good. If somebody can just let us know on one of the chats. If it's on YouTube, I can't see it. Oh, maybe I can. I actually can. Um, Hi, Lise. Thank you so much for the heart. Really, really appreciate it. You know how much I love a heart. I'm happy that you are watching. And let me do a check. Sound is good. That's what we wanted to see. Thank you so much for that. Okay. And Muffin is not sitting still. Muffin, sit still. Your audience is watching. Okay, so sit still so that we can do this. Right. So let me take this away. Okay, Muffin is not sitting still tonight for nothing. All right. So what would you say has been the biggest pattern that you, or one of the most um, common patterns that you've picked up so that we can help our men?
Well, one of the biggest problems is communication, really. And if you look at life in general, and specifically relationships, communication is a major problem. And in the couples that I've worked with, that has clearly been a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether you've ever experienced this. You probably
Same,
have, but
same.
but you know, even in a counseling session, the I couldn't control them. The loud yelling at each other at the top of their voice, I'm just constantly, um, and various levels of that. One time when this couple were arguing, I got a box of tissues that, of course, is appropriate and necessary for a therapist to have. And I said to the guy, "You think this is a box, and you're certain it's a box?" And I said to the woman, "You're certain these are tissues, right? You could argue about this for the rest of your lives,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's not the point. That is not the point." And so establishing the right communication, effective, authentic communication, is really important. And when you do, that's not just, a Band-Aid or something that will get us through the tough times. when you have authentic conversation, communication over difficult issues, and work them out, that is a massive boost to the relationship.
Yeah.
That's when people feel really good, when they've sat down, addressed with respect a difficult situation, have come to an agreement. That is amazingly powerful and a testimony to the type of relationship you have.
Yeah, and
So,
of course, when it goes through there, it goes into all your relationships because when you get it right in one area, it's better with your friends, it's better with your family, it's better at work, so professional life. So everything, everything. We really need amazing conversation for our entire life, and we're sort of lucky if we get to a place where our relationship deteriorates so much that we are forced into doing counseling, because
mhm.
then our entire life is going. And also, once we are happier, then that's also going to affect our entire life.
Yeah. And sometimes you you do need a third party to get you to listen. More than
Mhm.
once, I've said something to a partner in couples counseling, and they said, "Oh, thank you for that. That's really helpful." And then their partner
Mm.
said, "I've been telling you that for 20 years." They
Somebody,
probably have,
somebody
but
did
you're
that
not
today.
going to
Yeah.
listen.
Somebody looked at today. I said to her, "You need to remove two words from your vocabulary, please." I said, "Always and never." I made her write it on a big piece of paper and crumple it up and throw it away. And, and she was laughing so much because she said literally her partner have said to her last week in a fight, "You always say always and never."
You always do that. You never listen to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that happens in conflict, and again, this is about emotional management and intelligence. One of the things that happens in conflict is suddenly your mind is full of all the things you don't like about your partner, all the things that you think they've done wrong to you. And then this availability bias means that's all you
Mm,
focus on.
mm,
And if you're not careful, that can really degenerate
mm,
into a really bad slide into,
mm,
oh, this is a terrible relationship. What was
mm,
I thinking of when I married this person? And it just goes negative to negative to more negative to more negative to more negative. And you know
mm.
a week before you having a nice time, and now you want a divorce. It's you have to understand the process there to realize that trap.
So, wait, before we carry on, I want to ask you another question. I want to say thank you to Kelly for the hug, the care. Yeah, thank you so much for that, and thank you for watching. So, Howard, so when people come to you with this negativity thing, do you also see that most people do not see their own part at all?
Yes. Um, and if they were able to see their own part, if they were able to own up to it or accept that, hey, that's what I do, then you'd have a basis of better communication. You might not need a therapist.
Mm. Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
but most people don't. They have a communication style with their partner that is reflective of the relationship. Uh, and that can be very, very frustrating and lead to a lot of conflict. I
Mm.
mean, if I see a couple, or whether it's in professionally or otherwise, who say, "Oh, we've been married to 30 years and we've never had an argument," I thought, "Uh-oh, something's wrong here," because you live together,
Yeah.
share life together. There's going to be conflicts. They got to be
Yeah.
addressed.
That was the story of my very happily, codependently, blissfully happy relationship for 15 years. Where everybody said, "You are like a perfect couple, you never fight." And we never did because I had a conflict avoidant partner. And so silently underneath, there was something brewing in him. And I had the secret desire that please just say something, don't lay so much on me. And we see that in our book. So in our book, so many of these guys have talked about they didn't talk, they didn't say anything. Um, where do you even start? I mean, you're young, you're in love, it's too blissfully wonderful.
Right.
And then a lot of guys, and I see this, especially the younger and more in love you are, is, yeah, but I really don't mind. I just want you to be happy.
Mm.
And this happens so many times that I've seen that.
Mm. Yeah, so that they don't engage. There's
I don't
there's
think
there's
that.
really there's various reasons why men or women actually don't engage in that. One is they want to avoid conflict. One
Mm,
thing. Now the question is, why do they want to avoid conflict? Is that who they are as people, or is that a dynamic of the relationship?
mm, mm.
Very early on in my career, early on, really learned a good lesson. I had a couple in, and the woman was complaining, my husband, he's sitting there, he never says anything. And it's true, he was really quiet. Then in the fourth session, he said, okay, well, let me tell you how I feel. And he'd got like two sentences in, and the woman said, why do you feel like that? You shouldn't feel like that.
Yeah,
And he
exactly.
stopped and he said, and that's why I never say anything, and stomped out the room. So, it is a dynamic there. And the question is, why aren't people engaging? Is it
Exactly.
because they just like that and they don't engage with anyone?
Mm,
Or your communication environment is such that it just doesn't allow for
mm.
that?
And that we must talk much more about. So, but let's first start with a conflict avoidant before we go to the environment, because the conflict avoidant don't know that they are conflict avoidant. They are believing their own myth that they are being a good guy. They're taking care of this woman. They're showing her that he loves her because he's
Right.
bringing money home. Now she doesn't understand that language, and she wants him to talk and answer and be there and share.
Right.
So, but he's completely confounded because I'm doing my job. I'm caring for you, and I'm keeping shut. I shut up so you can be happier.
Right.
Uh, Right, right.
Mhm.
So, but he doesn't know he's conflict avoidant, and she doesn't know he's conflict avoidant either. So
Right.
it's a real conundrum.
Yes, it is. And actually, to be honest, one of the reasons why premarital counseling that I've done has
Oh,
actually been really helpful, because you
it
can
should be
bring
it should be enforced.
it could be, shouldn't it?
It should
Because
be.
it really brings these issues up before they've really had a chance to grow
Yeah,
and just become the norm. You
yeah,
can you can do that, and as I said, most of the time it's incredibly powerful, because people are addressing these things. They have a mindset they want to address, and they're addressing them kind of generally. They're not in the middle of an argument. It's okay, well, if you have conflict, how will you guys address it?
yes.
And
And you're
getting them
supposed to have conflict. You're
right.
supposed to have difference of opinion and be willing to have it, and then you actually avoid it becoming conflict.
Right, exactly. And it's as you say, should be it should be a requirement,
Yeah.
because thinking most people address that while they're in the middle of a conflict, and that changes perception. It would be much better to have people addressing it before they get there and think about, okay, how will that manifest between us? How do we do that? How do we talk things through? Do we, don't we? What's our style? A bit like the love languages.
Yeah, yeah. Now,
And
what is love? What does love mean to you? How do you think you're showing love, and what would it feel like to you to receive love? What does it look for you? What does it look like? For me, it looks like this. But
absolutely.
now, I mean, here's our real problem. So we've got a way bigger problem before we get there, and this is the very fact of codependency. And suddenly, you just meet two people, and they go like this. And now, while this is working, they're blissfully happy in their own world. You just fixed everything in me. And as long as I have you, it's all fine. And that is why people don't do counseling before the time, because they go like this.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the
Uh,
exact reason why it's not a popular option to, because I've
right,
got you, I feel fine. And you've
right,
got
right.
me, you feel fine.
Yeah, and that,
And it doesn't work.
that's true, and there is, again, time is important here, but there is a period of time where, I in a book I wrote called 10 Steps to a Great Relationship many years ago, um, I called it the NEA, a novel, erotic, sexual attachment. And that's the first pass, that's romance.
Mm, mm,
But it has to pass. It
mm.
might pass in 3 months, 6 months, a year, you know, but that stage passes. And then we get down to reality. And that's when these issues kick in.
But I think codependency outlive that initial sexual erotic attraction, because the
Hmm.
codependency remains, it lingers there. The wish for somebody else to fix you and the willingness on your side to give up issues that are really, really important to you. The,
Hmm.
the willingness to um, go with something that really doesn't work for you, to keep the peace, to keep
Hmm.
somebody happy, to and the big picture, keep somebody from leaving you. They must keep on liking you so they
Hmm.
don't leave you. And so we don't even know we are doing that. And it's also the very codependency that keep you together, but it's also the very codependency that starts to cause the resentment.
Yes. Yes. Uh, yeah. You don't do anything. That's your conscious or even unconscious, maybe conscious plan. You do that. And then you get resentful if when
Mm,
conflict comes up. Um, so again, it is about understanding how you relate
mm,
in the context of the
mm,
relationship, how you relate, and what do you do, and particularly when you do counseling with people, you begin to see how that happens and the roles that people play, right?
mm. Yeah.
Uh, uh, and of course, one of the things that happens is sometimes, very often, one person is a much better communicator than the other, and the other person feels they can never win. So why bother trying?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And what about the role of spite? Have you also noticed the role of spite in once we get to that resentment, and
Yeah.
it's a little bit like your guy that you said sitting there like that's why I don't speak. Like that guy is definitely spiting himself in some sort of way.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then but
Yeah.
I've seen even more than that, that it's like active spitefulness going on. And it very often happens from both sides.
Yeah. I think, again, this is about emotional intelligence and emotion management, right? And
Mhm.
there'd be numerous occasions in any sort of relationship where you were justified in feeling angry with uh, anger comes on the perception you've been treated unfairly. And so you're
Mhm.
just going to spend the rest of your life with somebody, or years and years. There's going to be opportunities where your perception is this is unfair treatment. And then
Mhm.
you're going to be angry. And then the question then is, and one of my favorite all-time quotes is from Aristotle,
Mhm.
anyone can be angry, but to be angry with the right person in the right way, for the right reason, for the right amount of time, not everyone can do that. And actually, a minority of people can do that. So,
Oh, I
yeah,
don't know that quote. It's a really good one.
isn't it a good one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone can be angry, but to be angry with the right person in the right way for the right amount of time is difficult. And that's true. And,
For
and that
me,
that is
sorry,
important.
yeah. No, go ahead. I'll
No,
chip
no,
in
that
now.
that is important because in a relationship, you are gonna deliberately or otherwise get angry with your partner.
Mm, mm,
And then the question is, how do you manage that? And
Yeah.
if you're not very good at managing it, you're going to be spiteful, revengeful, and then you're going to do all sorts of, retaliatory
Mhm.
attacks from, going and having an affair or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and that is pretty primitive. You know,
Mm.
we need
Yeah.
to manage our emotions better.
Yeah. I think the whole anger issue, I mean, the whole anger issue is just enormous because on one side you've got the avoidant of conflict, and then on the other side you've got the perpetually angry person who like flare up and just show anger at every single thing. But I think, sometimes it's really quite important to know that anger has a place, that it's not something that you never want to experience. But it is exactly like that quote. There's a whole lot that needs to happen before the anger plays. There's a lot of discussions that needs to happen. There's if you are if you angry because you take stuff personally, then you need to work on yourself. And if you're angry because you have fear and it's coming out as anger, you need to work at yourself. But if you get to a place where the anger is about your frustration, then that is the place where it needs expressing in the appropriate way. So
Yep.
anger helps us in so many ways to figure out where we need to work on ourselves, but it also shows us clearly where are we not having conversation, or where is somebody actually not participating in the relationship in a respectful, mutually engaged way, so that we've got the right to be angry because that person is not participating in the way that is agreed upon. Did that
Yeah.
long thing make sense now?
Yeah, yeah, no, it does. Look, emotions are alarms. Okay, they're
Mm,
signals that, hey, something was wrong. Okay,
mm,
now what you need to do is you don't need to attack the alarm and turn up the alarm louder and louder and respond to it. You need to
mm,
turn the alarm off and say, okay, and then address the issue. But
mm,
unfortunately, a lot of people don't know how to do that.
mm.
They get driven by the anger, and it's all about how they're feeling, not how they are managing the feeling. And that's really important. And in the book, I did use a quote from my favorite quote from a movie, which is Warhorse, where there's an older couple and they're struggling financially badly, and the husband goes out and buys a horse that he could not afford. And of course, his wife is really angry with him for doing that. And he says, "Oh, please don't hate me." And she says, a great line, "I might hate you more, but it doesn't mean I love you less."
And I think that was the title of the email that we sent out today. That one. We used that line that you used in the book because it's so powerful.
Yeah, because you're angry right now, yeah, if you're feeling angry, it's very difficult to feel close to somebody, but you should know that that anger is going to pass if you manage it. It's going to go down, and yes, you still love this person. Yes, you can be angry and love somebody at the same time. You won't feel the same, but again, we've got to distance, put our feelings in the right perspective. I'm angry that you did this, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. And because I love you, I'm going to put aside the anger and let's try to work out the conflict.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. So I want to get back. Don't want to go away from this because this is so important. I want to go back to the guy sitting on the couch and he's not talking. And don't you think that very often one of the reasons why he doesn't have a safe space to talk in about to talk where he can talk is because a lot of people are holding on to that anger.
Hmm. Yes, they don't know. They don't know how to accommodate feeling discomforted and motivated to work it out at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where the ability to distance yourself from the feeling, but recognize it. Hey, I got to recognize I'm angry, but I'm not going to let the fire of the anger burn everything. Okay, it's the alarm's gone off. Great. Okay,
mm,
now I need to deal with the problem.
mm,
And, that's hard because typically what happens, as I said, we know what happens. Somebody gets angry, then their partner gets angry with them, then the first person gets even more angry, and then we're just in an escalation of anger, negativity, doubt. Um, and you really have to be careful about that.
mm. Yeah, that's why I wrote a book called Hamster Wheel Relationships, because once we get in that cycle, we go and then something happens and it deteriorates, and then the retribution starts and the withdrawing starts, and then somebody will make amends eventually, because for somebody the withdrawing is going to be too much, and somebody will make amends, and there'll be the tentative steps back to each other, and we'll feel great, and then we go back again and we never resolve that issue,
Right,
never. And we
right.
just keep on going and we don't, and every single time it becomes more toxic, and every single time when we explode in anger it becomes more hurtful, and we become less hopeful, and so we just carry on and on and on, and nobody stops the cycle. And then that's we then when we get to the stage where we really feel like I can't do this anymore, or we really start losing hope. And then for me, the worst is some people actually just settle like this is never going to be fixed. I don't have anywhere else to go. I mean, we've got children. I have to just live with them. But that is for me the thing that is the saddest of all.
Yes, 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 it is. And, um, you know, sometimes, when I'm working with people, their relationship breaks up after 10, 12, 15 years. And sometimes actually that's the best thing that could happen to them.
Mm,
It isn't a good match. There
mm,
isn't, there isn't a proper connection there.
mm,
And that's okay to let go of it. Let go of the anger. This is an opportunity to move on. Wish your partner best. It was interesting. A few years ago, I had a guy who had been divorced from his wife, and they had kids, and his wife was about to remarry, and he put on Facebook, good luck. I hope you have a wonderful time. And he got like 300 people saying, "Hey, is this a joke? Are you doing this?" And he said, "No, no. Why would I not wish her well? I want her to
mm.
have a great relationship. Why wouldn't I do that?"
Yeah, but very few people have got that emotional maturity.
No, they don't. That is exactly
Mm,
right.
mm,
And it becomes just,
mm,
more and more toxic, which is no benefit to anybody, right? No benefit to anybody. You're still angry. Hanging on to that anger,
mm,
being is the worst thing you can do.
yeah.
You
But you know,
need,
I am really a big believer in the possibility that one can save your marriage, no matter where you ended up, if you have two people who are really willing and committed. I mean, couples counseling is not for sissies. It is. It really isn't. I don't know if anybody enjoys it. I don't particularly enjoy it.
right.
Until it starts working, then I just love it. But I don't think it's a very enjoyable process until it starts working. And
Well,
you have to be really committed to look at it, because the part that makes you need to be committed is I need to look at myself for a change.
yes, you do have to look at yourself, and you do have to accept and own up to your own actions, behavior, words. That doesn't mean you're going to continue that way for the rest of your life, but owning up and looking at that authentically is the beginning, the first step
Mm,
on
mm,
to change.
mm,
You can't change unless you're going to accept that change is needed. And so, yeah, and you're right. Couples counseling can be very, very challenging,
mm.
uh, but also very, very rewarding when it works well.
Oh, the best thing, the absolute best thing, when that communication starts happening and they don't need you anymore.
Right. Yeah.
That's a terrible thing to say. It's really not a good business strategy. But it is the best thing of all when they start
Oh,
talking and they can start fixing their own problems. Like, yes.
yes, you did it. Absolutely. You're making yourself
Yes,
obsolete. I
yes.
do, I do know. I did not. I don't know them clinically, so I was not involved. But I do know a guy who was married for 18 years, and they were in couples counseling for 19 years.
Oh,
And I think they had 5 different therapists. But if you are down that path, you probably know it's not going to work. um,
yeah, I do have to tell you that we went to 4 different psychologists and who just were not equipped to to give us real tools.
right,
And one said to me, "You're a very balanced individual." I thought, yeah, I'm doing fine because I knew exactly what to say. And I wasn't fine. I was
right,
really, really, neither of us were fine. But
right,
I wasn't fine. And nobody said to me I wasn't fine because I looked so good, you know?
hmm right, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there was no real tools. There was nothing really. So you're not always going to get somebody who's good at this game,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
No, no. You have to lay out, here's what's needed, and then they have to decide whether they want to embark on that
Yeah.
particular journey. But it all
Yeah.
comes back to, as you say, being honest with yourself, looking at your actions and thoughts and behaviors and how you act, and really evaluating them and being prepared to say, yeah, you know what, maybe that was inappropriate, you
Yeah.
know, and that's
Yeah.
okay. I mean, the
Yeah.
key to communication is authenticity, you
Yeah.
know?
Lauren, um, what's her surname? Has got she's got a book out that maybe it's me, and I
Mhm,
had a surname a minute ago, and now it's gone. Maybe it's me. I think that's
mhm.
like a book that everybody has to read. Maybe it's me because maybe it is me. We've got this dangerous thing between we blame ourselves for everything or we don't want to know anything. And to find like that middle where I don't blame myself for everything, but I'm really, really willing to look at how I am contributing or how I am not actually doing something positive to improve the relationship. Because I think that's something that a lot of us miss.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely, and that, for most people, that is challenging, that is difficult. They've never really been, exposed to how you address that or any education on it or anything. It isn't, in fact, au contraire, probably what's
Mm,
more out there in the
mm,
in the world and the media is the opposite.
mm, mm,
Is,
mm,
"Hey, stand up for
mm,
yourself, be yourself." I mean, I understand that, but, that can be misinterpreted. Look at yourself, be honest.
mm,
You're the person you really have to be most honest with.
mm, mm, mm. So, this thing about doing something positive. So, let's go with a scenario. Somebody really messed up. And I mean, there's no innocent party ever. It doesn't matter how good you look. I'm coming from, I was a good wife and I really messed up. So, I know that story. So, but sometimes somebody's like more obviously guilty and guilty like this. Um, And when you actually have to do repairs, because stuff do go wrong, there are people who neglect their partners, and there are people who are dismissive of their partners, and there are people who have affairs, and there are people who have huge anger issues. So those things exist. I think
Yeah.
the silent crime is neglecting people, and just taking them for granted. That's the silent crime. But
Mhm.
so if I go with Andrew Marshall and his theory that for every transgression, everything that you did wrong, you cannot repair with one thing. You have to repair with several things. I can't remember the exact count. In order for the trust and the balance to be restored in the relationship. Have you ever used that? idea that you have to make repairs, you have to make amends, you have to put more in.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you've screwed up, and I've screwed up badly, if you've screwed up badly, the first thing you have to do is accept your responsibility. Now, in many situations, you can turn and see how you were treated unfairly. And in fact, in the course of my psychology career, I counseled any number of felons. Every one of them denied responsibility. They said, well, my lawyer screwed me up, or the judge screwed me over, or and then you'd have to stop and say, yeah, but you did walk into a bank and put a gun to somebody's head. So the natural tendency is to play the victim, say, it's not really my fault, I've been treated unfairly. And you may have been treated unfairly, but that's not the point. The point is you put yourself in that situation, you made that decision, and now you have to own up and accept it. And until you do, your life will be stuck in exactly that place. You'll be stuck in the past forever. That's what you have to do. Absolutely. It's the only way you can move on. And, people have a tough time doing that. They have a tough time saying, you know what? Because sometimes there is a lot of unfairness about how you were treated and what have you, but that's irrelevant. The key is, hey, I screwed up. I take responsibility. I do not want to do that again. Now, you need a certain amount of self-compassion, because otherwise you end up just horribly beating yourself up, and that doesn't work either. It's, hey, I accept this. I made a mistake. I'm going to be honest and authentic about it. I'm going to forgive myself in the sense that I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I'm going to try to move on in a different way so this does not happen again. Right. And that, hey, yeah, I was in that situation. And actually, in some ways, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I learned, not just intellectually, oh, these are the things you need to do, but emotionally, spiritually, in every way, I learned that absolutely is the way to go. Be authentic and honest.
Did you have to be more transparent? Did you have to work to get trust back?
Yeah. And when you do that, it's a bit like trauma. It's a bit, and there's definitely parallels here. It's a bit like, someone's been traumatized and they do not deal with that trauma. It casts a shadow over their mind, body, and soul for the rest of their lives in many different ways. You have to address it. You have to exercise it. You have to come to terms with it and deal with it. And then what you find happens, that's the ultimate freedom. Because then what you find happens, you don't really care what people think. They're going to think what they think, right? They can think what they think. So you don't carry it around like, oh my God, I hope they didn't find out about that. Oh, who knows about it? No, you're free. You're free. You're honest. You're authentic. You accept, but you're free. And that's hard. That's not what people do, and they don't find that out unless they do that. And
I'm such a big believer in owning things, owning your rights, your adult rights, your rights to speaking, owning who you are, owning your preferences, and owning your mistakes.
it's the only way to go. Look, life is about adaptation, right? And you cannot adapt until you accept the situation you're in. That's the first thing, is here I am. And now I can try to adapt. And you can have the right mindset. You can have a certain degree of self-compassion, and you can have the mindset, which is, if this actually turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, what would I have to do now? What would I have to do now? Right?
Love it.
And
Because it sometimes is a blessing I mean, actually, not sometimes. I think every time you walk, you run into a wall. I mean, we can just look at these. We've just talked about all the blocks we have to actually getting couples counseling. And a lot of us are going to completely avoid getting couples counseling, which can really help us until something horrible has happened. And that will be a blessing because suddenly we can get that couples counseling and we can get out of that thing that was slowly festering or slowly dwindling or slowly not being watered. Like one of those pot plants who just sit and hope for a raindrop falling on it every now and again. I know a lot of people relate now. But
Mm.
um, just to, if something happens and we get out of that settle mode or that resigned mode of sitting on the couch and just talk, I'm switched off long ago anyways. But I'm now back with a guy on the couch. Okay, so now I'm going to call this the good guys club. So these are the guys who just want to have peace. They just want to be appreciated. They just want everything to be fine, and they're just doing their job. They're just keeping you happy until they give up on you. So let's talk about somebody who still thinks that they they must just keep you happy, and in order to do that, they can't have boundaries and they can't say, I don't like it when you treat me like that. I don't like it that you're so critical. And I don't like it that you keep on changing the goalposts. Um, so let's talk to that guy. You're a guy. Tell him. Tell those guys.
Okay. So, first of all, the recognition that you're doing that. Okay. Do
Mm.
you see that you do that? Can you give me a few occasions where you've done that? All right. Um, okay. If somebody were talking to you with that problem, what would you tell them? What would you say to them? If your best friend said, "Oh, I'm doing this," what would you say to them? How would you think about that? Because sometimes, externalizing things makes it a little easier for people to say
Mm.
and talk. What would you do about that? What is it that you want in a relationship? What's good about this that you want to preserve? Where are the challenges? Every relationship has challenges. Are they being addressed? How could you help them be addressed? Right?
Mm.
If you were having, a difficult conversation, how do you do that? What happens? You know,
Mm.
um, and then look at the different the communication styles that couples have. I mean, remember one guy. He wasn't. Well, he actually was. I think he was a lawyer. And every time he got into a argument with his wife, it was like he was addressing the jury, you know, he had all those skills and what have you. And she just gave up because she couldn't
Mm. Mm.
stand it, but she couldn't she couldn't compete with it, or she didn't feel she could.
Mm.
And you had to tell them, you're not in the law, you're not in court, right? You're in a marriage. It's different.
Mm.
We don't need to convince the jury about anything. You're not here. You're not here to convince your partner that you're right, or even convince yourself you're right. What you're here is, first of all, to learn what your partner actually thinks and feels. Right? And that's actually a problem with communication generally, but certainly
Mm.
complex marital communication. People think of communication as I've got to sort of assert my point of view. No, you got
Mm.
to listen, because if you haven't listened, you don't actually know where your partner's coming from. You're
Yeah.
just assuming, right?
Mm.
What is she saying or he saying? What are they saying? Listen to them. And of course, that is a standard tactic in couples counseling. And when somebody speaks, you should ask the other partner, now, what did you hear her say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? And it might be, what?
Well,
Where did you get that from? You didn't
yeah,
ever say
yeah.
that.
No, those very painful, very slow initial ways of of getting the conversation habits to change and people actually getting the aha moment of I've decided I've decided long before what anybody's going to say, what I'm going to reply, how I'm going to defend myself, how I'm going to make everyone guilty. Of course, we never plan to make everyone guilty. We just plan to make ourselves right.
Right.
Yeah, it's quite a big problem. I think that a lot of people don't recognize that other people have got a right to a different opinion.
And really, it seems to me that one characteristic of love, which after all is a very big word, but one characteristic is the willingness and desire to really understand the other person and what they want and what they need. How can you provide that if you don't know them, right? If you don't know what's in their heart, what they need and what they want. And if you're just going on assumptions or what just works for you, you're going to have a problem.
But that kind of love, where you were not two whole, emotionally mature people before you met, and the only thing that made you feel whole and somehow fixed was that kind of relationship is not going to be one where you have the ability to take in that somebody is very different from you, because this very much relies on the premise that we are better together. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the one without the other is not a working concept. It's unthinkable. And so it's that whole thing of going into relationships in order to fix yourself instead of fixing yourself. And
Right.
and I mean, let's face it, how many people don't have healthy relationship examples in their houses that they can learn what it looks like to have a committed relationship with people who are their own people and who are respectful towards each other.
Right. And it is the biggest test or sign of love is how do you deal with disagreements and conflict? Really, that's what makes it different. You know, somebody you claim to love and a stranger where you don't have that connection. Yes, your communication might very well or should be different in those situations. Um, you need to care about what the other person wants, needs, what they're saying, and how do you meet that?
So, what about now? We go back to the guy on the couch. Okay, and that unfertile ground that his words have been falling on, and he's saying, "This is why I don't speak." So, let's go back to what is fertile ground.
Well, so then it would be, well, why do you think this, doesn't resonate with your wife? Now, it might be, oh, well, my wife doesn't like to hear anything. She flies off the handle. I said, well, okay, well, independent of that, is there a way you could present this in a way where she wouldn't fly off the handle, where she would listen, where she would understand? And again, this is a vast percentage of people are not taught these skills. They're just
Hmm?
not, right?
But
I
let's
had
note, you're actually asking a guy who never speaks to actually become more assertive and change his own habits and actually start thinking that he's not powerless and he doesn't just have to sit on the couch and be quiet, but he can actually start looking at a different way of presenting things. I
Mhm.
mean, before that, he can actually start thinking about the fact that he can speak.
Right. And again, the question is, what is your goal or your purpose in speaking? Now, for
Mm.
most people in all sorts of communication scenarios, it's to get my point across, to tell people what I think. But actually, that is not a key to effective communication. Effective
Mm.
communication is understanding where your audience and where the other person is at so that you can approach that in an appropriate way that is
Mm.
going to lead to productive discussion, not just alienation. But that's
Mm.
when most people think of communication. I'm just going to tell them what I think.
Mm.
Well, okay, but that's not going to go very far.
But the guy who's sitting on the couch quietly, not saying anything, just with his I've given up, resigned, or quiet resentment.
Hmm.
That guy is alienating himself too from the
Hmm.
relationship because he's not
Right.
participating.
Right. Because he feels he can't or he doesn't want to,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that equation is. He's feeling that. But, just think how empowering it would be if he could talk in a way that he was listened to, right? Now that's clever. That takes work, but it's
Yeah,
very
that takes work. It does. It really does. I think the first hurdle to overcome is to know if you are the guy who goes into to keep the peace.
right,
You may keep the peace for now,
right.
but it's just not going to work long. You're
Well,
not supposed to go into a relationship to keep the peace. It takes two people to take the peace, to keep the peace. and
right.
and 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 you have to have something. You have to have something in between and then keep the peace. You don't have to have peace at all costs. You can
No,
always repair it, have the conversations, and go back to peace, and that gives you more stable relationship, because when you don't have one that in the end you fight about everything and nothing, and you can't even remember what the fight was, but you've been fighting for such a long time that you don't even know what started it.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and if you did, you'd disagree on that. Right? Because he gets in, that's the mindset after a while, is just
Yeah,
total conflict and
yeah.
disagreement. Uh,
Well, I love your example of a tissue box. There's tissues and there's a box, and just such a powerful way to look at it and to say that we can see from things from different ways, and we can both be right. I think we go back to transactional analysis where the goal is I'm right and you are right, as opposed to I'm right and you are wrong.
no, right.
So,
Hmm.
and
Right.
which of course most people don't understand that, but it's so magical when you can come from a place of I'm right and you are right, and there's this huge emotional growth that it takes to get there.
Absolutely. And, it is a very simplistic notion of control when you say, well, I'm not going to agree to that. That's not really control. That's fear. That's
Mm,
avoidance.
mm,
That's everything
mm.
that is destructive. That is not helpful. But
Yeah,
again, a lot of people have that communication mindset.
mm. A lot
And
of people get stuck on this whole thing about control. A lot of people blame narcissism for a heck of a lot of things that instead of growing themselves. But this whole control thing, whenever you want to control anything again, it's like you say, it's fear. You're only going to go into control mode if you deeply, deeply fear.
right, right,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, and so that's also always a good question is what are you afraid of? What are
Yeah.
you afraid of here? And for a lot of people, they just never question that. They've just
Mm,
grown up.
mm,
They see it in the culture. They see it in the media. They think that's what a guy should be. Right?
mm,
A guy should be
yeah,
demanding and tough and winning mentality and all of that.
mm,
The culture is so damaging in
yeah,
that
yeah.
regard. It really is. We need,
Okay.
as guys, to change that because the power comes in exactly what we're talking about,
Mm,
not some sort of defensive posture.
yes. So, but now let's talk. Let's say something to the wives, because I don't know about you, but I don't have a load of men knocking on my door and saying, I need to get my wife here. We need to fix our relationship. But ah, please help me. How do I get my husband here? We need to fix our relationship. I mean, that I hear a lot.
Mm,
Um, but now, if we just go from you not getting him there, but you yourself can start doing some amazing things in order to start changing your relationship immediately. Can you give maybe two or three pointers to the wife who can't get her husband to come and she really wants it fixed?
right. Again, that might be how that is being communicated too. You know, um, I think a lot of times it sounds like, well, come to therapy and the therapist is going to tell you how wrong you are. Well,
Yes, exactly.
nobody's going to go do that. If you're going to do
Mm-mm.
that, yeah, I really want you to come to therapy because, they probably agree with quite a lot of what you say. Right.
Always
Oh,
and never. Don't
yeah,
use
yeah,
always and never.
right. Exactly. So again, it's how that's communicated. But, for anyone, and whether we're talking about wives or husbands, but in this case, wives, this is also about yourself primarily. This is about you. This is about who you are, how you interact with your partner, what you really need and want in a relationship, and being honest about whether that is being met or not, how, when, and so forth. So this is about you. And as much as at times, of course, a partner would be very helpful to be there with you, it's not necessary to start with, for sure. This is about you, and I've seen numerous women who were sad about getting divorced and what have you. And honestly, I think it was the best thing that ever happened to them because it was not a good match, was not an match. Guy wasn't really loving of them in the way we would mean it. And yeah, time to move on. Don't live the rest of your life like this. We have to accept that. And the reality is, certainly, maybe less so now, but certainly in generations before, a lot of people, got married when they were very young. Your brain's not fully developed to your mid to late 20s, and a lot of time people get married, as teens or early 20s. You've
Yeah, I
got to
was one of those silly people who had such a big need in me to be fixed that
right,
got
right,
married
yeah,
at 90.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
no, it's a good
And
point.
and so people develop that through their whole lives, but particularly through their 20s. Um, I used to say adolescence ends at about 35. I didn't mean physical, but I meant beginning to understand who you are, what you want, what your needs are, really understand yourself as a person. It takes a while. You
Unless you
don't,
start, if unless you're lucky enough to start with some sort of counseling a little bit earlier, but most of us don't.
yeah. And a really good question to ask anyone is, what is it that you want and need in a relationship? What does that
Mm,
look like without it being, absurd? Oh, I want to marry a millionaire or whatever. What are your needs? What is that ideal relationship?
yeah,
What's your love
mm,
language? What are you looking
mm,
for?
mm.
Uh, and I think those are really good questions, generally probably much better addressed outside of,
Yeah,
marriage. And you can
absolutely.
think of them more neutrally than being colored by your current relationship.
Yeah. I would I would put it a little bit differently. I would say stop your wishful thinking and learn how to speak. Uh, Learn how to speak about what's really important to you. It's the wishful thinking part and the somebody should know part. That's the thing that trips us up. So I want to just point out you are not actively in counseling anybody right now. You're not. That's not part of what you're doing right now. But if anybody wants to write a book,
Hmm.
you are doing a lot of that. You're helping people get their stories out.
Hmm.
And do you want to share the good news or not about your?
I mean, I am doing some coaching. I'm actually working with some younger guys who have got into addiction. So I'm enjoying doing coaching with them. Yeah, I'm still writing my books and helping other people write books. In this field, self-help field generally. And yes, the good news is one of my books is currently being made into a documentary and hopefully a movie. And I've got a couple others that I think once I get to the right people will also do that. So that's kind of fun development.
That's amazing. Also, people need to look at in the future for more from you in Psychology Today, also because
Mhm.
That's also one of the things that you are busy with. Okay, so if anybody wants to get hold of you, then they can contact you. If we can put your contact details under the video for me. And
Absolutely.
I want to ask everybody who comes in afterwards, because we get most of our views afterwards. So I want to ask everybody who comes in afterwards and watch to please share this, because I mean, I do say this all the time, but we really do know a lot of people who don't talk. And we really know a lot of people who are very frustrated. We know that. We women, we know that because our girlfriends tell us. We know that.
Mhm.
There's always a woman who have 2, 3 women who've confided in her about the frustrations of somebody not talking to them and this dead end and the whatever one. So please, if you are a woman watching, we're going to have more women watching than men.
Mhm.
Please share this with your girlfriends, and more than that. Where's my book? Here's her book. This. I already have such a lot of orders for people who wants this book as a Christmas present for men. And I think it is one of the best ever gifts that you can give a man. You know, that species, you don't know what to give men normally.
Mhm.
This is brilliant, brilliant as a Christmas gift. So please share this, and I'll put the Amazon link in also. Please just share this, and we like this. We like the hearts. Thank you all. Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you all for doing this for us. The likes, the shares, the comments. If any of you have got any questions for Dr. Howard Rankin, please just tag him at Howard Rankin, and he will. Facebook will notify him. And if you have questions for me, I will come in. I will check, and please share, and don't forget your copy of our book. Parting words.
Well, again, relationships are the most important parts of our lives, and we owe it to ourselves to work on them and work on ourselves and our role in them, perhaps more than anything else. Well, one of the things that comes from the work of people who work with people who are dying is one of the things most people say is, I wished I'd spent more time focusing on my important relationships. So don't wait.
Oh, love it. It's very powerful. It's a really good place to stop at. Um, Thank you so much. I hugely enjoyed this conversation, and this is just outstanding advice for anybody. Thank you very much about that. Everybody, thank you for watching. We value your time and we value your hearts and comments and shares. So thank you so much for your time, and all of you are important. So thank you so much. And until next week.